We recently got a first look at Resident Evil 8, also known as Resident Evil Village, because that's a word you can crowbar the Roman numeral for 8 into. While the teaser trailer was short, it was full of hints, clues, and intrigue as to what we'll be seeing in the final game, due for release in 2021. It also made it look a lot like Resident Evil 8 will be breaking away from some of the series' most sacred traditions. Here are 6 ways that it looks like Resident Evil Village is going to break the Resident Evil rules. Don't get me wrong, I loved Resident Evil 7, but the enemies, which is to say the toothy, shambling fungus piles that you spent the majority of the game fighting, weren't exactly a series high. That being said, they were very much in line with the zombie enemies you usually encounter in a Resident Evil game. Fairly slow, not too much of a threat, and generally only dangerous in numbers. Brand new for Resident Evil 8, however, is this thing, which really does look a lot like an actual werewolf. Obviously this is Resident Evil, not a Hammer horror film, so it's probably something to do with viruses, or parasites, or mold, rather than being an actual person who turns into a wolf during the full moon. But the tattered clothes tell us it was a human once, and this thing is terrifying. Also, judging by how quickly it can move outside the house, it's going to be a real nightmare to fight, if we can fight it at all. Of course, there will be other enemies in the game, and from what we've seen in the trailer, these will be somewhat more familiar. For a start, we have what looks awfully like a coven of witches who seem to have bug powers, similar to Baker family matriarch Marguerite.
You scamper your way out of that!
Then we get a brief glimpse of a silhouetted figure clutching a massive hammer, deliberately reminiscent of the Executioner Magini, one of the few memorable things from Resident Evil 5. Well, that and Chris Redfield punching that boulder. He's also flanked by what look like human or near-human enemies holding farming equipment for that authentic Resident Evil 4 experience.
Un forastero!
Finally, and arguably the biggest departure for the series, could these be ninjas? No, obviously. God, can you imagine? As you'd expect from a game called Resident Evil Village features a village. Capcom, call me if you want to use that quote on the box. It's not the first game to use this kind of setting though. Famously, Resident Evil 4 throws you into the deep end at the beginning of the game, with Leon showing up to a rural farming village in Spain, where he's given what you could charitably call a frosty reception, in that everyone is trying to kill him.
What are they planning? Chainsaw.
From the looks of the village in the Resident Evil Village trailer, we can expect a similar kind of rural setting to that seen in Resident Evil 4, although if the currency on the inventory screen in this developer video is to be believed, the setting is now Romania rather than Spain. Even so, the dilapidated farmhouses, overgrown fields, and discarded produce all give the sense that normal life was abandoned long ago, much like Leon's first experiences with the village in Resident Evil 4.
¿Qué carajo estás haciendo aquí? ¡Lárgate, cabrón!
Sorry to have bothered you.
What's very different in Resident Evil Village, however, is that not all of the villagers seem to have been turned into mindless ganados, as was the case in Resi 4. In fact, there are several locals who seem to be totally normal, apart from the fact that they haven't fled the creepy run-down village full of werewolves, like this farmer-looking dude. This mysterious lady, and this other mysterious dude who at least dressed for the weather. The point is, it looks like we'll have some in-person allies, which would be a real change of pace from Resident Evil 7, where we were mostly either being supported over the phone, or by people who had a spade put through their heads seconds after we met them.
Hey, put that door back! Put that door back!
But who are they? And why are they still here? I don't know about you, but I really want to find out. A small point, but Resident Evil 8 is quite a departure from what we expect from the series in terms of the environment you'll be in, thanks to all this snow. The Resident Evil series has done snow before, from the Antarctic base in Code Veronica, to the Finnish trek of Resi Revelations, to the snow-covered mountain in Resident Evil 6, but never for a truly extended period of time, and when it has done snow, it's always a memorable change from the usual mansions and forests and labs that the series specializes in.
Oh, mountain's coming down! That must really hate us today!
This is the first time we'll see a snowy environment with the incredible-looking RE engine though, and that level of graphical fidelity is going to really up the horror that's unique to snowy environments, like creepy footprints, red blood on white snow, and frozen bodies, which we assume are going to be all over the place because I'm pretty sure garbage collection doesn't take dead people. Regardless, judging by the trailer, it's going to look spectacular. I mean, the bits that aren't covered in dead horses, obviously. From what we've learned about the story so far, Resident Evil 8 is going to continue the story of Ethan Winters, the protagonist of Resident Evil 7.
Mia, oh thank God I found you. It's me, it's Ethan.
Ethan? Ethan?
Are you alright?
Ethan started that game getting his hand cut off and apparently isn't doing much better this time around as he gets shot at with a shotgun and then dragged underground by grasping monster hands. Classic Ethan. This in itself, however, is a pretty big break from Resident Evil tradition in that it's very unusual for Resident Evil games to have the same single protagonist 2 games in a row.
You really shouldn't have come here.
There have been a couple of games back-to-back in which one of the characters you played was Chris Redfield, but there have never been 2 consecutive games following the same solo character. What's interesting about that is that Capcom obviously felt there was more to Ethan's story that needed to be told, and that needed to be told now, rather than waiting for a few more games to come and go. Indeed, we see Ethan's wife Mia in the trailer, along with what could well be their baby, who seems to be at the heart of the story in Resident Evil 8.
What is it with that creepy story?
It's just a local tale.
You're really into that stuff?
Quit being so paranoid.
Is it some kind of monster baby due to the fact that both Mia and Ethan were infected with Resident Evil 7's mold? We'll have to wait to find out, but it's totally going to be that, isn't it? That's going to be a weird boss fight for sure.
You shouldn't have done that!
If you remember Resident Evil 7, you'll recall that at the end of that game, longtime series hero Chris Redfield showed up repping for something called Blue Umbrella, and looking, well, kind of different to how he's looked previously in the series.
I'm Redfield. I'm glad we found you.
That's not to say that Chris's look hasn't changed over the years. It's been well documented that he spent the years between Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 5 downing protein shakes and doing eccentric barbell curls so that he could punch boulders in half, but his look in Resi 7 seemed to be more of an older version of his original look. When he showed up in the Resident Evil Village trailer, however, I've got to say I was not expecting this absolute unit.
Chris?
In awe at the size of the lad, frankly. This Chris, who looks about 4 feet wider and 40 pounds heavier than he did in Resi 7, also looks much older and a lot more intense and brooding than he has done previously. I don't even know what kind of barbell you'd need for that. He's also dressed all in black, usually the sign of villains in the Resident Evil franchise, and if you're still unsure as to his alignment this time, his entire contribution to the trailer is shooting Ethan's wife Mia 5 times.
Why?
We don't know for sure if Chris is going to be a bad guy this time around, but the fact he's working for at least some version of Umbrella is a possible red flag. That said, early leaked rumours about Resi 8 that have proven true so far claim that hallucinations play a big role in the gameplay, but it wouldn't be the first time a beloved character from the first Resident Evil has shown up as a villain in the series.
Jill, come on! It's me, Chris! Snap out of it!
A major plot point in Resident Evil 5 was the fact that Jill Valentine was now evil, although it later turned out that she was just being mind-controlled by Wesker. Would certainly explain the outfit. So the jury's still out as to whether Chris will end up being as evil as him wearing a villain coat and shooting someone 5 times would have us believe.
Sorry, Ethan.
See? He said sorry. The resemblance between the Romanian setting of Resident Evil 8 and the Spanish setting of Resident Evil 4 doesn't just end with the fact that they're both villages topped by a castle. They're also deeply unsettling villages full of weird occult symbols. But in Resident Evil 4, the bulk of the creepy occult symbols were confined to the castle with its goat-skulled cultists and candlelit ritual rooms. In Resident Evil 8, however, it seems like that stuff is deeply tied into the village as well, with eerie writing, unsettling totems, and this creepy embryo birdwing symbol, which is apparently so significant to the story of Resident Evil 8 that the developers debated whether or not to put it in the trailer for fear of giving too much away.
There's a lot that's being shown in it. So much so that we debated whether or not to actually put it in the announced trailer.
Take a look and let your imagination run wild.
Nope, no idea. Anyway, the point is that the village manages to be even creepier than the Resident Evil 4 village, which is no small feat, although they are clearly trying very hard. Like, I'm not sure a normal person needs quite so many cow skulls on their wall, my dude.
They're coming. Who is?
You're a goth, we get it. And while the occult symbolism in Resident Evil 4 was mostly for show, the general vibe of Resident Evil 8 seems to be that a lot of this occult stuff actually works and has real-world consequences, as with the Coven of Witches we see hanging around the opulent castle that is the village's centerpiece. The actual occult being a real thing would be a big change for the series, and coupled with the hallucinations rumour, we would absolutely not be surprised to see Village going in this direction. Also, have you seen how much garlic this guy has in his house? We're in Romania. Could we see an appearance from Dracula? I mean, probably not, but we've got to amuse ourselves until next year somehow. Come on, Capcom. Anyway, that was a quick look at Resident Evil 8, known as Resident Evil Village, coming our way in 2021. Are you excited? What are you hoping for from the game? Let us know in the comments, and like and subscribe for more Resident Evil Village from Outside Xbox. Thanks for watching.